Hello, and today we're going to be looking at Freckle.io's GTM strategy from an outsider perspective. Okay, so we don't have access to their customer list, but we do have access to their website, to the logos on their website, and we can come up with a strategy, find some top accounts that they can reach out to, and then how we'd go about prospecting those ready for outbound. So head over to their website. We can see, obviously, from the title, it's the data your CRM's been missing. So it's centered around the CRM. Freckle sits on top of your CRM, auto-enriching every record coming in from any source. Ask for any attribute you can imagine, and our AI agents will scour the web and 50 plus data providers to provide it. Okay, cool. And we scroll down a little bit, we can see that actually they're helping RevOps teams using HubSpot and Salesforce, which makes sense because any RevOps sales team that are taking sales seriously will be using one of those two tools. And so we can already get a sense of, okay, we want to have some technology filters there. Okay, so where do we want to start? We want to actually build the ICP, build the account tiering, build the persona tiering, and from that we can use these customer logos. So my advice is to bring all of these across into a Google Sheet spreadsheet. We've got the names. We can then obviously search for the website, LinkedIn, making sure that we are grabbing the right website and right LinkedIn URL. And from there, we can do a simple export. So download CSV, and we can actually head over to Freckle, the tool, to analyze their own GTM strategy. And you can see here, I've already built out a table called customers. And if we head over there, what I've simply done, if we head back, is just hit new table, upload a CSV file, drag that file in, and we'll have these three columns imported. And then I have simply enriched with company. Now, this is linked to Apollo. So if we go all the way across and we hit new column, all actions, we can see enrich company here. We'll obviously need to reference using the company website so we can put in the right company. And then what it does is pull in this column. And if we double click here, we have a whole bunch of information: city, phone, state, country, industry, total funding, annual revenue, just description, the list goes on. So I've then pulled out the columns from this piece of data, and we've obviously got country, city, founded year, industry, account description, latest funding stage, total funding printed, annual revenue printed, estimated employees, and then I wanted to extract some further information on whether this company is B2B or B2C. Did it using Freckle's research agent. So effectively what I said is I want you to first head over to the account description. If you can determine with a high confidence that it's B2B or B2C from that, you can stop there. And I want you to just classify as B2B or B2C. If that's not enough information, then I want you to head over to the company's website here and scan all their copy and check that way. So you can see here we've got B2B, B2C, class with a high confidence, and then a justification on why it's classified it that way. So now we have a whole bunch of data on Freckle's customer logos. So we can download this file and chuck it into a tool like Claude, and we can actually start looking at breaking down this data. Now, obviously, we've got to prompt and reprompt and make sure we're feeding the right guidelines and information. But after a little bit of that, we can scroll the way down to the bottom, and I've got this nice little summary breakdown here. So I've just dragged that across over to Google Doc, and we can see here that Australia and US are the main countries. B2B is the main classification, mostly in IT and services, so information technology and internet. And then if we dive a little bit deeper, it's in AI, platform, SaaS type companies. So we can really focus there. In terms of funding stages, most are seed and Series A. There's some venture in there. There's one Series B. There's some undisclosed. But I think we can potentially go for unfunded companies or companies that are at the seed or Series A stage. And then we've got employees. So look, we've got the bulk between 51 to 200. There's a couple below that, but do we really want to be spending time on those? Lower budgets, lower likelihood, and then obviously only one customer above 200 plus. So I think it makes sense to stick with the 51 to 200 range. And then, so what we can do is start building out the ICP. So ICP statement, we are targeting RevOps teams, because if we remember from the website, trusted by 3,000 plus RevOps teams. Okay. So RevOps teams at B2B tech AI companies in the US, Australia, between 50 and 200 employees using HubSpot, Salesforce. These are the basic filters that I'd use. And then we can have a look at tiering. So I thought long and hard about this. And I think it's very, very clear that they should have a RevOps team, right? Because we're solving a RevOps problem. But when we actually start trying to find RevOps type roles and companies that have public information about RevOps team, it does shrink down the TAM quite a lot. And so actually it makes sense that for tier one, we simply keep it to has a RevOps team. And it's really good as well because we're not using a generic signal that everyone else is using. Then obviously tier two could be more about an emerging RevOps function. So they might not have a RevOps team, but they could be hiring for a RevOps person. Or they could have 2+ strong GTM signals like they've recently raised, and they're hiring for SDRs, BDRs, AEs. Or maybe they've got rapid growth and they've raised funding. So a couple of different, if there's, as long as there's a pair in there, that's fine. And then the final one is, are they using a competitor tool like Clay? Because if they are, they likely have some RevOps workflows. So even if we can't find a team or that they're hiring for somebody, it's likely that we can engage in some good conversations with them. So yeah, I think that one as well could be classed as a tier two. And then everyone else is a tier three. And then so that's account tiering. We also want to do persona tiering, okay, because not all people are made equal when it comes to GTM. In terms of tier one, I think it needs to be primary decision makers. So head of RevOps, because they own the RevOps function, but also VP director of GTM. I think for tier two, VP director of sales, mainly because sales have a lot of interest in, AEs, BDRs, performance. It's not so much about RevOps. So I think we can put those in tier two. Founder and co-founder might be interested, but as we get to kind of bigger companies, their focus will be split elsewhere, but they might be sales-led. Obviously, in the beginning, they would have done a lot of founder-led sales, I imagine. So, it might be worth going after founders and co-founders still. You can get a good referral, but probably not tier one. And then tier three would be RevOps managers, sales ops managers, anyone that can influence a deal or you can have some good conversations with. And so what do we want to do now? Well, we actually want to start finding some top tier accounts, right? And so where can we start? I think a good place to start is looking for lists that align with the tier twos, because then what we can do is we can layer on top of that, do they have a RevOps team? And then we'll get the tier ones out of it. So we'll have a list of tier ones and tier twos only. So we can have list one could be hiring for RevOps. List two could be looking for 2+ signals. So all the pairs that exist within here. And then the final one could be using a competitor tool like Clay. Now, obviously, there'll be loads more lists that we can pull to get more and more accounts as time goes by. But again, this is the lowest hanging fruit. This is the best place to start. So we can head over here, and you can see we've got these TAM slices, what I've just mentioned. We've left out using competitor tool for now, just for simplicity. We're using Prospero as a data provider just to scrape this data super quick. But with Clay, we need to find that information through another route. So just for kind of just to be quick, let's keep it to hiring for RevOps and these 2+ GTM signal pairs. And in total, we have 102 accounts. If we dedupe that, we have 81. And just kind of for reference on how we did that, if we head over to Prospero or Apollo's another tool, we can then start, searching for, companies that are in the United States, in Australia, employee headcount between 51 to 200, technology, information and internet. We can look for HubSpot and Salesforce, and job postings. Let's start with hiring. Let's start with RevOps. So we've got 2 accounts in here, so we can basically select those, apply, and we can add them to a list. Now, I've already created a list called Freckle GTM signals. You can see in here that we are combining all of these slices into one single list. And so I can just simply click on that, hit add to list, and then repeat for all of the other slices. And so what we get once we've kind of gone through all of that process is a list of 81 accounts, and we can select all of those and we can export. And here we go, we have this file. Now, we want to get some further information now. We want to actually find out about, do they have a RevOps team or not, and then do some tiering. So we can then import this data set into Freckle. So again, heading back to here, new table, upload, CSV, drag that in. And again, I've already created this table. So it's this Freckle GTM signals enrichment, which we've opened here. And we've also removed a whole bunch of columns that are also imported across from Prospio. We want a nice cleaner data set. And you can see all of this is automatically dragged across, and I've just added this column here, RevOps team size. Now, how does that look in practice? Find people, and I want to, again, make sure that we're pulling in the right companies, so reference company, website, and then job titles. There's going to be a few, right, because not all companies, not all job titles will have RevOps in the name. They might call it a GTM engineer, they might call it GTM ops, they might call it sales ops, but they might still be what we would consider RevOps. So we might remove that, but we might actually say, look, I want RevOps in the title, I want GTM ops in the title, I want GTM engineer, and kind of repeat this across all of the major job titles. And then max number of people 5, because if it's 5 or if there's 10, doesn't matter, they got a RevOps team. And then we can hit save and run all rows, and the output looks as follows. So actually, if we want to dive into the people here, we can click on this and we get taken to the people's table, and it's all of the records across all of the companies that are found. So Trust and Will, you can see here, RevOps manager. You can see the second one, RevOps and enablement. Prosper Ops, we've got GTM operations analyst. Builder.io, we've got GTM engineer. So it's coming out with some good outputs, and yeah, that's great. So if we head back to this enrichment table, what we want to do now is actually tier, but we can't tier because we can't actually pull this information into the Freckle prompt, because this is querying another table. And so we can simply just download this file, import this again as a new table, and here we go, exactly the same table, but you can see here it's pulled in the value, the text, the string, as opposed to querying the other table. And then we can query using Freckle and say, look, if there are one or more people, I want you to assign a tier 1. And if there's no people, I want you to assign a tier 2. Okay, and then we have all of the tiering in here. We can download this data set again, and we can whack that into a Google Sheets, and we've got everything here. And then we can start filtering by tier 1s, pull that information out, and you can see here we've got all of the tier 1s that'd be great to reach out to, in the next few weeks and months. So the next thing you want to do before you start kind of prospecting, and adding prospects to sequences is I think it's always good to have some AI messaging angles. Again, you want to do your own research as well, and over time iterate on your prompts to make them more accurate, to make them better. But as a good start for 10, I would download this data set as a CSV. I would throw that into a tool like Perplexity, and then I basically prompt it and say, look, I want you to add an extra column. I want you to use the signals here, and then I want you to come up with messaging angles in, say, if they've just raised, why they might potentially need RevOps help. But I don't want it to be so simple like that. I want it to also search for other things on the web, other news sources, so that actually comes up with a messaging angle. So it's messaging led rather than signal led, because a really important thing to remember is signals are good to determine account fit, but you don't just want to, blindly use them in your messaging. Hey, congrats on your recent funding round. Done. You really want to kind of get a little bit deeper into where is that company right now and why do they need RevOps help. So again, we can push those signals into Perplexity, but we also want to say, look, I want you to basically scan the web. This is what I'm selling, and I want you to come up with messaging angles, whether they use signals or not, so that I have some ideas on how I can reach out to people in the company. Okay, and Then you can basically get a CSV and obviously add that in as a Google Sheet. So it's exactly the same table, but now we have some messaging angles here. And like I say, over time you want to reprompt and iterate on your prompts so that you're getting better and better information that goes out of it. And then it's time to prospect. So what I would do is I'd take builder.io, I'd head over to LinkedIn, I'd search for builder.io, I'd head over to the people's tab, I'd go all the way down to here, and you should have Sales Navigator. I mean, if you don't, you could probably search for this manually or use Apollo or something else, but I like to use Sales Nav. So I'd hit view. And then I'd look for people that fit tier 1 and tier 2 personas. So Steve is a tier 2 persona. So I might then open him up into a new tab and I would find this. And then I can use a Prospeo Chrome extension to find his email, find his mobile number. So I'd click those, use up some credits, and then I would push to either directly into the CRM or to maybe an outreach sequence like Outreach or Salesloft, or if you're doing, say, LinkedIn outreach, maybe Lemlist. If you're doing email only outreach, maybe Instantly. But outreach for kind of more multi-channel sales. And repeat this process across all of your different personas. So I would go for Jeffrey as well, head of demand generation and growth, because it's likely he's involved in some of the clay workflows and clay builds if they're using that tool, or if not, enriching information and things like that. Finding the right people. I'd target Greg, VP of Sales. I'd target Brent, and I would probably target Brian as well. And over time, you'll know whether you need to narrow your personas a little bit and continuously kind of update your ICP and tiering. So once you've done that for your account and you've been through all of the personas and you've added them, you can then head back to your doc, and I would just then simply copy and paste that across into prospecting. And it's at that point where I'd say, look, now let's actually do some research of our own, 5 minutes max, to see if we can find any non-AI messaging angles, anything that's relevant that adds any value. Always remembering that non-AI messaging angles should trump AI messaging angles, okay? Because that's what you've actually done. You've done some thorough research. You can trust yourself over, some risk, which is AI, which can sometimes get it wrong, okay? But obviously, like I say, the more time goes by and the more you improve your prompts, the better these outputs are going to be, okay? And then I would repeat that process across all of your accounts that you've qualified but not added prospects for yet. Add prospects using Sales Nav, Apollo, add them to your sequences, build out this list. And then all that's left to do now is to go to your task list in a tool like Outreach and to do outbound, right? To phone, to call, to email, to connect on LinkedIn, and to build pipeline. So to summarize, this covered obviously ICP and tiering for Freckle by breaking down their customers on their website. We looked at who are their tier 1 and tier 2 accounts and some good examples there, but also how do we then research those accounts and how do we add prospects so that we can actually start doing outbound at scale. Awesome. And any questions at all, please add to the comments and I'll get back to you as soon as I can.